But the two main party candidates are both very impressive candidates and both heavy hitters. Will Anita's be impacted by Trudeau? I'm not sure. Anita is a very impressive candidate with lots of experience. She really did a masterful job of managing the pandemic portfolio, the acquisition of PPE materials, managing the vaccine responsibilities. You know, she's been basically a roll up the sleeves kind of candidate. Mr. Chinzer is a former police officer in a community that has been hit harder by the uptick in crime recently than most areas in Halton region. So I think he's got a very interested and engaged audience for his message and his experience. So it's going to be a really interesting one to watch. And I've been carefully watching on all the prediction sites. And this is one that's constantly on the bubble. Like it's constantly like it's a toss-up riding. It's always like it could go either way kind of thing. So it's been fascinating to watch and see where the poll numbers are. 338 has them only a couple points apart, I should say, and it's still a toss-up. So it's anybody's call.
Paul, I've spoke with Anita Anand numerous times working here and hosting Halton News, and have joked with her that whenever something went wrong over the past several years, the cure, the plugging the holes, was Anita Anand, from procurement to Minister of Defense when the Ukraine war happened, and it just kind of went on. Recently, it was to, Minister of Transportation, trying to knock down the trade barriers. Anita Anand is crucial to the Liberals, at least in my opinion. I feel as though she is a name that is very highly recognized and respected in Oakville.
Well, certainly that, Jason. I think that Anita has an awful lot going for her. She's certainly well educated. She has wonderful experience. She's a professional with a very broad background. And the critical issue that we face largely across the world is leadership that hasn't got the right preparation, experience, and qualifications. Anita absolutely has those things. Not to say that the other candidates are not good candidates. But the question becomes one of, have they got the right preparation for the circumstances? Would that hurt her that she stepped out of the race? She said she was retiring. I actually think it was a savvy move.
You think that is something that I think we saw in the past election. We did see that type of behavior hurt Natalie Pierre in Burlington, where that race was very, very close. She had stepped away and then jumped back in.
Different issue.
Okay.
So for Anita, it was clearly to do with the leader. With Natalie, I think it was just a question of how she perceived her role within the community and what her aspirations were. And I think that they felt that there was an opportunity for her to do more and to make another contribution.
Samira, a former Toronto police investigator in a section of Halton that has I don't want to ramp up and say a lot of problems, but I do feel like I'm reporting on cars being stolen every day on Halton News, and Oakville is very much a target.
True, that is true. Oakville also has a lot of people with a lot of good cars. And
True.
So that is one of the biggest reasons why you will see Oakville in the news so much, especially when it comes to auto theft. And if you check out Mr. Chinzer's social media, you will see he talks a lot about it. He talks a lot about what reforms need to be made, and having that experience helps him. But coming back to the topic of Anita Anand, I'm one of her biggest fans, so full disclosure there. But I agree with Paul. It was all about the leadership for her, and I kind of roll that way myself too. For me, I have to resonate with the leader to be able to put my name on a ballot for that party. And so I understand Anita, what her thought process was. She was done being a Trudeau Liberal, but as soon as Mark Carney came up, she was happy to be a Carney Liberal. And I think that's where the difference is between her and Natalie's story. And let's not forget, her opponent came really close to her because the opponent too enjoyed the Carney effect, being the Liberal candidate. So that's something we cannot forget.
Can I get a piece of this again for a second?
Yeah.
So I think there's another piece to this too. And as a politician who has won elections and lost elections, I can tell you that nobody wants to lose an election. And I think the reality was, and the writing was on the wall, that the Liberals were going down in a major way. And that included Ms. Anand. Like that was, she, and as a professional person, as an academic, as a well-respected lawyer, etc., did she really want to go through an election where she knew what the outcome was going to be before she put her name on the ballot? So I suspect, and I don't know this, I have no inside knowledge of this, but I think it's not just a matter of who the past leader was, although he was ultimately, that was cause and effect.
Yes.
I think that part of it too was that a lot of these Liberals that were dropping out of the race and suddenly came back in, I think they basically saw the writing on the wall and said, I ain't going to win this. There's no point me putting my family and myself through this. I might as well get on with my life. And then all of a sudden, the clouds open up and the polls change and the leader changes, and so they feel that it was an opportunity to come back in. Sounds a little opportunistic, but it's also realistic in some ways.
Yeah.
I'd just like to add on top of that,
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is elected officials don't necessarily win. The previous guy or woman loses.
Yep.
And so the writing was clear
Yeah.
leading up to this. And the two things that changed were Carney and Trump.
All right. Well, I mean, you meant here is a place where someone can win, and it will be a new someone can win. We're going to continue on with Oakville, and we're going to go to Oakville West here. Oakville is, of course, divided a little bit differently now, and Nikki is going to explain this in our next piece. But this, MP Pam Damoff has stepped away. She declared that probably about a year ago now. So let's find out about Oakville's other riding, Oakville West.
This is the first election since the electoral boundaries changed last April. We've changed from Oakville and Oakville North Burlington to Oakville East and Oakville West. We're here in Oakville West. It's representing the town of Oakville just west of 16 Mile Creek, and that represents 105,000 people. Now, previously in the last election, the Liberals took the seat with about 47% of the vote. However, MP Pam Damoff is not running for re-election, and that means there's a host of new faces on the ballot. Liberal Party's Sima Akan is trying to make history as the first female Turkish federal candidate. She owns a local robotics company and is concerned with safer streets with real consequences for criminals, as well as supporting local entrepreneurs and innovation. Conservative candidate Tim Crowder has a background as an executive in banking. He wants to restore the Canada where hard work is rewarded and owning a home is not just a dream. For the New Democratic Party, Diane Downey is running. She wants to address housing shortages and threats to the public health care system. The Green Party's Chris Kowalchuk has a focus on electoral reform, creating and sustaining a green economy, and protecting Oakville's green spaces. Also on the ballot, J.D. Meaning is running for the People's Party of Canada, and Martin Gegas is running as an independent candidate. Who will be the first to take this seat in the House of Commons? That's up to the voters to decide. From Oakville West, I'm Nikki Wesley.
Well, I believe last time around it was you, Jeff, that said the candidate that is in the riding is worth about 5% up or down of the vote. With this, we have a whole bunch of candidates that I'm not sure many people know here. This is where people can actually make a name, but it's so hard to get a name out there with this. So what does your 5% rule do here?
Well, I think it's going to prove the point, because I think the outcome of this election is going to, in that particular riding, is going to depend largely on what happens at the national level. Tim is a very nice man. I have met him a couple times and I know of his background. I don't know a lot about the Liberal candidate, but I hear she's a good candidate. I don't have any first-hand knowledge of that. But I do think that this is one of those examples where the party collapsed so much that nobody really wanted to have the nomination. There were other prominent Liberals that I was surprised didn't run, but when you look at it, you say, yeah, this wouldn't be the election I'd want to be my first election in. So I think she got the nomination. I believe she was acclaimed, if I recall correctly, and I think she's going to, her fate's going to rise and fall on the leadership. And we've had so many other elections like this in the past. If you think back to the Layton NDP effect in Quebec, where college students who had just turned 18, ran for the NDP and ended up winning. And in 1984, my gosh, I'm old. In that big sweep election, 211 Conservative seats, there were also people who would otherwise be never considered or really considered, realistically in those ridings that ended up winning and becoming members of Parliament. So it really boils down to the national leader. There's an extra percentage. We talked about the 5%. There's also a bump you get for being an incumbent.
Yes.
And I would predict that to be 5 to 10% on
Okay.
top of it. So I think you can get about 15 local points, and we've seen some of that in even some of the results that have been happening in Atlantic Canada so far, where some really popular local incumbents have won, and in a couple cases, bucking the trend that we were already starting to see.
I was actually surprised in this riding, I have to say, because you have a clean slate here with Pam DeMalf leaving, and you also have a redistribution of how things are going as far as the ridings in Oakville. And I thought at least one of the two parties would put a superstar candidate in, a name that we know, and that didn't happen, because it surely did happen, and we will get to the new Milton riding, which has two candidates that are well known. But Samira, I thought perhaps we'd see a name that perhaps from another level of government or some experience or someone coming back to this, and these are all newbies.
Yes, you're right. And I've met Seema, and she's a wonderful lady. But much to what my colleague here said, she's new. And I think at that point when the appointment was made for Seema and the other candidate as well, at that point the Liberals were in a position where the writing was on the wall per se, and that they were lucky to get a candidate who was interested.
Right.
So, and in the last 2 months, we have seen all of the scenario flip on its head, where now the Liberals are competitive.
Yeah, more than competitive, I would say. Any thoughts here on Oakville West, Paul, and a bunch of new candidates?
I think that's especially challenging at this time, simply because whenever we have new candidates, if you think about it at the municipal level, we have months to get to know the community. In this instance, all of a sudden we had a situation that occurred that was galvanizing. At the same time that they were the parties were trying to get their candidates lined up, and suddenly they're off to the race. I look at the candidates for the two major parties; they look like very nice people. I particularly like Seema.
There's a theme here tonight.
Yeah, the nice people. This is the nice people.
Well, but in fairness to Seema, she was in the Lions, a member of the Lions Club, as am I, and I think that's a really important characteristic.
It is.
All right, well.
I want to point
Yes,
out something
one more
else. It's really so the what happened with the Liberal Party and the perceived writing on the wall that Paul and I are talking about didn't impact it had the opposite effect with the Conservatives, because in Oakville West there were a number of people who contested that race. So
Yes.
I think that for the same reasons why the Liberals in many cases just didn't want to make that their first election, there were many Conservatives who said this is the time for me, and so they jumped in the race. That was a hotly fought race by several candidates, and Mr. Crowder came out on top, but it was surprising in some ways, because there was one well-known local candidate in particular, Carrie, who was, in fact, I'm shocked she didn't win that, because she was a candidate previously and she's very well known in the community, but it was a very heavily contested race. And again, I think that just like the Liberals were knowing they were going to run and lose, at that time it was like an Alberta riding where you win the nomination and you win the seat.
Right. All right, well, let's get into the riding that was untouched, and that is Burlington. Incumbent Karina Gould. Let's take a look at who the competition is.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Calderbank for YourTV's ongoing coverage of the 2025 federal election. I'm here in Burlington, and recent developments have added new dynamics to this race. Longtime Liberal MP Karina Gould is seeking re-election. First elected in 2015, Gould made history as the youngest woman appointed to the cabinet and the first to give birth while serving as a minister. She played a pivotal role in implementing the $10 a day child care plan and currently serves as leader of the government and the House of Commons. Challenging her is Conservative candidate Emily Brown. A familiar name here in Burlington politics, Brant, who ran in 2021 and garnered 37% of the vote, brings experience in education and the energy sector. With a more competitive national race, she aims to close the gap this time. New Democratic Michael Beauchemin, a chemical engineer, offers a practical perspective to the campaign, and the Greens have nominated Kyle Hutton, a reoccurring candidate working to increase his profile. However, the campaign trail hit a bit of a bump in the past week when an all-candidates meeting scheduled at Port Nelson United Church was cancelled for safety concerns over a planned protest by the PPC party. The protest, described as a convoy originating in Hamilton, raised security issues, leading to the event's cancellation. This development has sparked discussions around the impact of political demonstrations on the democratic process. With Burlington being one of the tightest races here in Ontario during the last provincial election, this federal contest could come down to voter turnout and the influence of the national party leaders on local decision making. I'm Kimberly Calderbank, and we'll continue to bring you the latest updates right here on YourTV.
That is your rundown for Burlington, and since we have a representative from Burlington here, Paul Sharman, I turn to you first for what do you think? Is Karina Gould dominant to just run over everyone? I mean, Emily Brown has tried this before.
Well, in contrast to Oakville West, we have two candidates we know very well,
Yes.
and a third we also know quite well. And you know, I know both Karina and Emily very well, and I can say that they are both strong players. They're both bright, well experienced, well educated, and very capable candidates. If you go back to the race for the leader of the Liberal Party, Karina did a phenomenal speech there, and you know, she's looking good. She's well liked in the community. So the issue here has been the Liberal leader in this particular riding more than anything else. As it has changed elsewhere, I think it is going to be changed. It's going to influence this election in this riding, and frankly, you know, I'm thinking I know where this is going to go.
All right.
I don't want to jinx it, eh?
Well,
Don't wanna jinx
Samara,
it.
you know, we talked about Karina made a great speech when she was
Yes.
running for the Liberal leader. Along with that, she has been said that had a great performance in both of the debates, the French and the English. However, the results did not turn out for her there at all. Did not place well. Will that affect anything here?
I don't think so. I think Karina is not one of those MPs who are, you know, sitting in their office and it's very hard to get to them. She's out and about in the community. She shows up. She's easy to talk to and understands what her role is. And I think that makes a big difference. Burlington community has growing issues because Burlington community is also growing, has new diversity that's coming in, and that's where the MP comes in because a lot of visa issues are also added to the community's problems. And I've heard really good things about how Karina's office handles those issues, especially in the immigrant community.
Jeff, Mark Carney did not find a spot for Karina Gould in his current cabinet. He did find a spot for Anita Anand. What does that say?
Well, I wouldn't draw too many conclusions from it. Anita Anand is an extraordinarily accomplished and experienced professional. Karina Gould is obviously a very competent and capable, but is she a nice person? Because we've branded everybody as nice tonight, but I think she's very young in her career in politics. But also I think there's another factor, and yes, I think she actually won both of the debates for the Liberal Party leadership. The challenge that she had was the Liberal Party seemed to be wanting to move back to the center. They wanted to move back to being the moderate Liberal Party that they vacillate between over generations, it seems. And Karina was pretty left of center in that leadership campaigns. I'm not suggesting that if she was a moderate she would have won, but she maybe would have fared better because I think the party really had enough of sort of that center-left politics, and they wanted to move closer to the center, which is frankly where Canadians largely are, I think, traditionally. So, you know, I think that you know, she's got a great shot at winning, from what I understand. I know that 338, for example, has called it for her. She's a very good constituency person from the encounters that I've had, and well respected in the community. So I think she's got a good shot at returning tonight.
Let me add, I think that that she's not been put on the cabinet is more a function of the reduction to the wartime situation. You know, if you take a look at what she did in parties so far in government, she's had some wonderful jobs. She's young. She's been going through this wonderful experience track, and seasoning is a good thing. I think in this particular cabinet, Carney was looking for something else. And her time will come.
There have been bumps, though. I mean, let's not forget what's gone on with, there was the the Nazi soldier who was invited. That Carina was the whip at the time, and took a bit of heat for that in the House of Commons. So there have been bumps along the way here. I don't necessarily know if that's going to affect anything tonight. I'm just throwing it out there as you have a slight chuckle, on a slight smirk on your face there.
Well, in fairness, who amongst us has not had bumps along the way?
Yeah. One quick thing I want to add is that one poll is reporting out of Burlington, and Carina is leading by 38 votes.
By 38 votes. All right, we'll follow it along.
A trend.
Listen, that was basically the provincial. That was the provincial gap.
It was.
Yes.
It was right about that
So
when
she's-
we went through
So she's
for
past
the riding
that.
of Burlington. All right, let's go. A new riding that has been created as Milton was divided. So it's Burlington North, Milton West, and this is where we now find Adam Van Couverden.
The race for Burlington North-Milton West is on, and voters in this brand new riding will have plenty to think about before casting their ballot. 4 names lead the charge: Liberal incumbent Adam Van Couverden, Conservative Nadeem Akbar, and the People's Party's Charles Zack. The NDP's Naveed Ahmed completes the list. Now, one flashpoint is the CN Intermodal Hub. Akbar says Ottawa has failed the community. Zack calls it a lost cause, but Van Couverden insists the fight isn't over and says he's secured more dialogue from Prime Minister Carney. Now, agriculture and food security matter here too. Candidates agree Canada should grow more of its own food, but they differ on how. The Liberal sees farmers as climate allies. The Conservative says past governments lacked a plan, and the PPC says government should simply get out of the way. How about housing affordability? Another dividing line. New Democrat Naveed Ahmed wants the federal government to fund provinces and developers directly, but with conditions. Zack wants an immigration moratorium. Akbar believes it's poor planning. And Van Couverden defends co-op housing, shaped, he says, by his own mother's legacy. From healthcare and climate to reconciliation and Canada's place in the world, this election matters. It's about who speaks for this fast-growing region. From Burlington North and Milton West, I'm Devin Murrigan.
All right, there we have it. So the new riding, Burlington North, Milton West. Now, the last 2 times Adam Van Couverden has run, he has not only won, but he's had over 50% of the vote. Samira, this is in your region. I'll start with you here. Adam is a very strong candidate, to say the least. Nadeem Akbar has run before, a similar situation that we've seen in Burlington that we were just discussing, but I think that this might even be a stronger candidate here.
I agree with you. I'm also a resident of that riding, so full disclosure, and I agree. Adam is a very strong candidate. Now, what has happened in this new boundaries is that a lot of Burlington has been added to this riding. And so in the end, my analysis is that whichever candidate knocked Burlington the most, considering the fact that Nadeem was also the opponent last election, I would say that person will pull it off. And you are correct, Adam has always had 50% vote, and last time he won with a 10,000 vote lead.
Yes.
So definitely it's looking that way, but I do know that Nadeem and his team has worked very hard. I was there when we had the 2021 election, and I'm here looking at this election, and I will say that I have seen a considerable improvement in that campaign and a lot of hard work. So let's see.
Well, that's good to know. Gentlemen, you were having discussions. What was happening? I think your mics are live, by the way, the whole time, and you were chit-chatting over there, talking about this riding, Burlington North, Milton West, Adam Van Couverden, very much a star, again, for the Liberal Party. Paul?
Well, I'll start off by saying, talking to Adam yesterday, he was looking at the attention he's getting in the Burlington piece of the new riding.
Right.
And I think that is consistent with what we might expect for the rest of Burlington and Oakville West. The size of this property that is riding his car. It's almost unimaginable. So he's got a bit of Milton, but he goes right the way up to Guelph.
He's gonna, if he gets in again, he'll cycle around it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He's still a very fit man.
Very athletic,
He does calls with us all the time, and he interrupts his runs to join me on Halton News. It's quite humorous, actually, because of how out of shape I am and what a great athlete he is. I always feel bad about myself. No, Adam, you're lovely.
I'll just summarize on that. This race could well tire him a little.
It could tire him a little. All right. Jeff, your thoughts on this new riding?
Well, first of all, just to explain what the naughty schoolboys were talking about, we just noticed that riding is currently blue.
Yes, I noticed that as well.
So that's early. I don't know how many polls that is. It could be one poll. Oh, it's two.
Yeah.
Adam Van Couverden is one of those guys that I think his popularity transcends parties. He's a well-known, Olympic star, fantastic constituency guy. I mean, putting parties aside, he is really good at serving his constituents. And as a politician, as a councillor, I can tell you that I give high regard to that because it's something that's not easy to do. So I think he's earned re-election from an electoral perspective, but the two polls are not a great start, but we'll see how the evening progresses.
Yeah.
I expect we're going to be here a while.
Yeah, we might be here a while.
And he's a very nice man.
Very nice man. Very nice.
It's our theme tonight. We have a whole bunch of nice candidates
That's right, yeah.
that we are talking about. Well, one of the things, excuse me, that I actually saw out of Adam Van Couverden following his social media, because he is very big on social media and getting his message out there, is yes, he was campaigning in his riding and going around Burlington and the riding of Milton West. But he also spent some time in Milton East, Halton Hills South, lending his strength to the Liberal candidate there. So let's find out about this new riding, Milton East, Halton Hills South, with a couple very familiar names.
Voters in Milton and Halton Hills are faced with discovering new riding boundaries in this election after a review and redistribution of federal electoral districts 3 years ago. A process that Elections Canada says was undertaken to ensure voter equality due to population changes. The town is being split in two, and the dividing line is along Highway 25 to Ontario Street, Martin Street, and Nassagaweya is squeezing town line. The full riding runs north to 15 Side Road, cuts up Highway 7 and along 22 Side Road, then borders Brampton and Mississauga to the east and Highway 407 on its southern limit. The candidates vying for your vote are Parm Gill, who's running for the Conservatives. He has most recently represented Milton provincially, becoming a cabinet minister in 2021 in the Citizenship and Multiculturalism portfolio. Gill was appointed to the position of Minister of Red Tape Reduction the following year and stepped away from provincial government in 2024. He also has some federal experience as the MP for Brampton-Springdale between 2011 and 2015. Personally, he's married with 3 children and has a background in family business. Christina Tesser-Dirksen representing the Liberals. She's coming off the provincial campaign trail after finishing second in that election 2 months ago. However, Tesser-Dirksen is probably most recognizable as a Milton Town Councillor for Ward 1, a job she's held for 2 terms. Personally, the lifelong Miltonian is married with 4 children and her husband runs a small business. Muhammad Riaz Sahi is the NDP candidate. He's called the area home for 5 years. His professional life began as a teacher before becoming a lawyer, drawn to the ideals of advocating for fairness and equality. Nothing of his personal life was noted in his online profile. Susan Doyle is the Green Party's name on the ballot. Professionally, she's the CEO of an eco-education nonprofit organization that focuses on reconnecting young people with their environment while advocating for a sustainable, connected community. She's also a longtime community volunteer. Personally, Doyle is a mother to 3 children. Walter J. Hoffman is the candidate for the People's Party of Canada. He spent most of his adult life deeply involved in the ministry and believes in civil liberties, freedom of speech, religious rights, and property rights. Hoffman also espouses that inappropriate mandates were imposed by the federal government during COVID. Personally, he's married and a father of 3 children. Shabazz Mahmood Khan is on the ballot as an independent. Founder of his own realty brokerage, Khan is most interested in issues like gender ideology, crime control, job creation, affordable housing, healthcare, and education. Personally, an online profile notes participation in volunteer work. And that's a brief overview of the names you get to choose from on the ballot in Milton East, Halton Hills South, where the winner of this election will be the first ever to represent this newly created riding. Jason Trout in Milton East, Halton Hills South.
Milton East, Halton Hills South. This again, the stomping ground of Samira Ali. And in this particular case, Samira, you know, we mentioned that there are two star candidates here, very experienced candidates. One that actually did defeat you in an election,
Yes.
and one that you work with as a counselor. You're rolling your eyes. I have to bring these things up. People have to know. We talked about that last time. So I want to know your thoughts, Parm Gill and Christina Tesser-Dirksen.
You are correct. Both are star candidates, and I've had the pleasure of working with both of them in my own counselor capacity. However, Christina has been, you know, my council mate. And I was a local councillor in my last term, which is when her and I both got elected. So kind of like grew up together on council, that situation. Wonderful lady, family, Milton family, born and raised, 4 young adult children, a lawyer, funeral director in the past, strong Georgetown roots. I used to work there for many years, and all of her children are born in Georgetown Hospital. So she does have that kind of star touch that you require to defeat an incumbent, which Mr. Gill is, who
But he's not an incumbent. This is a new riding.
he is,
He isn't.
in a way, for Milton, he is, because he was the MPP. And in a way, he has more recognition that way because of winning those ridings twice as an MPP. And having said that, Christina just ran a Liberal provincial election. So they both balance each other out in the most unique way. And I would say that in the end, the deciding factor would be the Georgetown votes, which is used to voting for Mr. Chong, but now has Mr. Gill on the ballot, but then Christina, who they know has strong Georgetown roots there as well. So it's
You're really playing this right down the middle,
It is-
Samira.
it is in the middle.
Really right down the middle. I mean, you got your gal pal here. I figure you went into that in depth, and then you pulled it back, and you're like, no, it's still right down the middle. So
Well,
let me get the
yeah.
thoughts of the other panelists here. Paul, what do you take out of this? Christina Tesser-Dirksen, it was just brought up. She just went through an election here. We just saw her in the provincial election. Does that help because her name is out there, or does that hinder because she didn't win the last time?
I do not know how to call this one. I don't have a view, but because I have met Parm a few times, but you know, it was a rather different experience from when I met Christina. Christina struck me immediately as being friendly and positive and got bounce and energy and actually cares about things in a different way. She knew immediately who I was, and you know, my memory is very poor, so I'm always shocked by that. So I'm kind of, you know, I'm with Samira. I'm interested to see how this is going to play because Parm has done some interesting things with his own career moves in recent times.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeff, let's go to you here.
I would
let's talk about the riding.
Okay.
Because Samira brought up the riding that is used to voting for Michael Chong.
Yes.
That is a strong conservative candidate, which we'll talk about in a minute. But in this case, now they're voting for Parm Gill.
Yeah.
Does the party allegiance there, does that just help Parm?
I think from a demographic point of view, I think that's a very conservative constituency in general. I mean, it doesn't matter who you're running up there. I mean, I think it's a very conservative, largely rural community, and so I think it would defer to conservative candidates by its nature and its history. I do think that the Chong factor, there's a quote for the night, we're going to call it the Chong factor. I think the Chong factor will play a big part of this because he's so well liked, and people will, I think, perceive that you know, they'll be equally well served by another conservative, and I imagine he's playing on that. But what I will say about this, and I don't know a ton about this riding, I'm aware of Mr. Gill. I don't know Samira's other best friend because she was, well, you were playing it down the middle, so and I'm sure she's a nice person. But I do know that he will be probably the single most disappointed person in Canada if he loses tonight. Now he is a few votes ahead right now. It's 171 to 141 with one poll reporting. But I mean, he walked away from a cabinet position, a senior starring role in the Ford government, to on this speculative, we're all going to win, carpet ride that they were expecting in this election. So if he loses this thing, he's going to be a pretty disappointed guy for sure.
It's interesting the tactic that Parham Gill has used in this election, and it was something that we saw of the provincial Conservatives, where many of them just hid behind the leader. They let the leader do all the speaking for them, and they stayed quiet, because I have not seen Parham Gill appear anywhere as in this entire election run, and that is the exact opposite of Christina Tesser-Dirksen, who has appeared everywhere. Not only that, you've also had Adam Van Couverden appearing at her side numerous times as well. They've almost been campaigning together on social media, because you do have some of this riding being formerly Adam's riding, so he's trying to shift that star power over. You mentioned the Chong factor. We might as well get into it. Let's talk about the Chong factor. Let's go up to talk about Wellington-Halton Hills North.
Acton stays, Georgetown goes. A new riding takes shape. With federal voters heading to the polls, the electoral landscape in the northern reaches of Halton region looks a little different, and it's shaping up to be a contest focused on affordability, growth, and local change. This is the historically familiar Wellington-Halton Hills riding map. Now, if you live in Halton Hills, the key change is that Georgetown is no longer part of the district. However, Acton remains a significant community within the new Wellington-Halton Hills North riding, which now also stretches to include parts of South Guelph and still Wellington County towns like Fergus and Erin. So who wants your vote in this revamped riding? 5 candidates are officially in the running. Incumbent Michael Chong, who's represented the previous riding since 2004, is running again for the Conservative Party. Acting resident and skilled laborer Andrew Bascombe, who had previously ran for the party in 2019, is representing the NDP. Former military pilot Sean Carskadden, now flying with Orange Air Ambulance and living in Guelph, is a candidate for the Liberals. Halton Hills business owner and former RCMP officer Sil Carl, making his 3rd run for the seat, is the candidate for the People's Party. And kinesiologist Liam Stiles, who grew up in Guelph Hermosa Township and now works directing active living and long-term care, is the Green Party's candidate. In a redrawn map facing familiar challenges, voters will decide who earns their trust and becomes their voice in Ottawa. 1 seat, 5 names, many decisions with 1 future. Reporting for the riding of Wellington-Halton Hills North, I'm Dee Glazebrook.
And that is, as we have called it on the panel, the Chong factor. Michael Chong is an extremely strong candidate here. Jeff, I'll start with you on this one. Also, you have a series of candidates that don't have much experience against him. This just seems like if there is one spot in Halton where we will have a dominant victory, it is this ride.
Absolutely. Well, Michael Chong is one of those. He's an MP's MP. Like he is so well liked in the House. He is respected around the world, except by China, who has banned him apparently. Maybe that's a badge of honor. I'm not sure. True. But he is a reformer in the not in the capital R reformer, but reformer in the small R, meaning that he has worked hard to try to reform even how House politics works. I mean, one of the problems we have, in my opinion, in this country is the fact that the House, individual members of Parliament have really no say or authority in the grand scheme of things. It's all dominated at the leader's office. All parties are like this. Michael Chong actually had a private member's bill brought forward to try to equalize or at least create some degree of authority on the part of MPs, some voice beyond just being told and whipped to vote a particular way. He's a great constituency guy. He's well loved by everybody. He ran for the leadership of the Conservative Party, and I think he has a great future ahead of him in the party. I mean, he's been there for a while, so but I do think we're going to hear a lot from Michael Chong in future years. I'm a big fan.
Paul, I feel like the Liberals may have thrown in the towel in this particular riding. I will say, when I did the research for when this election was called, I went through every riding, did the research for it. I could not even find a picture of Sean Carskadden. He was not on the Liberal website till a few days after the candidates have to be declared. This is a tough go for anyone against Chong, and I think the Liberals kind of went, someone's got to be there.
Well, thank you for posing the question quite the way you did that, because I'm looking at the the Elections Canada website for information about Sean, and he doesn't have a website of his own.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes.
Yep.
And clearly, I wouldn't put it quite the way you did. I'm sure Sean is proud to be representing the Liberal Party. It's just that he's got a really strong opposition.
Yeah.
Samira?
I agree with whatever was said here. Chong is very strong, and that could be also.
That's a new slogan.
That's a new slogan. Chong is strong.
Chong is strong.
Yeah.
From the Chong Factory, Chong is strong. Now
Are we
have a
keeping
rhyme.
tally of these
You know what?
things,
I
too?
gotta. It's, I mean,
There's also
we're
the
at-
Ted Arnott factor.
Well, what is the Ted? I mean, Ted Arnott was just stepped away as
Yes,
well. But
yes.
what is
But
the Ted
you know,
Arnott
when
factor?
the provincial candidate is
super
so
loved.
strong
Oh, he's
and
very
loved,
much. Yes.
and then that also translates into the federal conservative candidate being loved so much. So I just wanted to point that out.
right.
Big
I want
fan
to
of
take some credit for Ted Arnott. I was
yeah.
the field organizer for the Conservative Party when we recruited Ted Arnott to take the job. He was a constituent assistant
Wow.
for the previous member of provincial parliament. So
And I'm a
I
big
want
fan of him
full
too.
credit.
You brought that up last time. You're
Yes.
still working on it,
I'm still
Jeff.
working on it. I'm trying to get all the credit I can get.
All right, we are going to continue this special. We have results coming in now, but what we are going to do is take a quick break, and then we will come back. We will give you some of the results, discuss more, some of the themes that have gone into this election, and we will continue on right here. It is your vote on Your TV Halton. Welcome back. It is your vote right here on Your TV Halton. I'm your host, Jason Agnew. Joining me, the three panelists. We have been on for about an hour now. Oh, we're going to look at Oakville East before we talk to the panelists. Well, here is Oakville East. Panelists, we are seeing some results. By the way, it is Samir Ali, Paul Sharman, and Jeff Knoll here in studio with me. Very preliminary as far as the polls go, but we do have, at the moment, well, we have 1% of polls reporting for Oakville East, and we have right now Conservatives ahead. Look at that.
Yeah.
By 9 votes. I have a feeling it's very early. That could very well turn around.
Well, it was certainly one of the ridings that's been picked as a toss-up riding. So this just demonstrates that it's probably going to be back and forth all night. There'll be nobody will have fingernails left in those two campaign headquarters this evening, or in this room maybe.
It does surprise me because you look at Anita Anand coming back to this, just being such a big name and such a well-known name. I'm actually surprised that this could even happen just with the 1% here. I'm surprised that there is. That it can be this close at any time. I figured she might just walk in and boom, here we go.
Listen, Chinzer has worked very hard. He has been campaigning forever, and he has an issue that resonates with Oakville residents, particularly Southeast Oakville residents, very strongly. The perceived epidemic of crime, and it's not an epidemic, but I mean, tell that to the people who've been victimized, but because it's if your street has a break-in or has an issue, for all intents and purposes, it is an epidemic, right? He has that issue, and that's a very important issue for him. He has credentials in that area, so he is able to demonstrate that at a door-to-door basis about the fact that I'm going to be your champion on this particular issue. But you're absolutely correct. Anand is a superstar in the world of liberal politics and the world of politics in general. She's held some major portfolios. She's demonstrated herself time and time again that she delivers results. So I think I think 338 has nailed this, that it's going to be a toss-up all night, and we could be here for a while.
Anytime we get into the topic of crime, that is somewhere where the Conservatives do push forward, though, Paul. I mean, this is where, when it comes to international relations and Trump, that seems to be a boost for the Liberals. Anytime we talk crime, things that are happening here in our community, the Conservatives do tend to, excel at that. They get people on their toes for it.
If that's the issue, frankly, if you take a look at Oakville East, you've got to be concerned. You've got to think about the nature of that community. These are relatively well established, capable, wealthy, successful business people and members of the community. They are highly attuned to everything that's going on in the world. They know that surely the Liberal Party could have fixed Montreal Wharf and stop the cars from going out of there. But is that a reason to look at the leader of the Liberal Party in the context of this particular election? I'm not counting 9 votes as being that indicative.
Samira, it's early, but are you surprised? This looks to be a very close riding.
Yeah, it does, and I agree with Jeff. I can attest that Ron actually has worked very, very hard, and you're right. When it comes to being tough on crime, people take the Conservatives very seriously, and there were mistakes made by the Trudeau government. I'm going to be the first person to say that. In fact, what I do like about Mark Carney is that on his website, he starts off, when he talks about the budget, when he talks about crime, he says, mistakes were made and we're going to fix them. And I love that about a leader who can accept the mistakes that were made and then tries to fix them. We see that with Doug Ford. That makes him so endearing to all of us. That's the same thing with Mark Carney. And I think with Carney, we will see the results that we're looking for, which is, and I know my colleague, Councillor Knoll will attest, being the chair of the police board, that we do need to tighten our Montreal ports and have scanners available to stop, the menace of auto theft.
Jeff, one of the criticisms that does come out, though, is sure, new leader, same party. I hear that resonating all the time. New leader, same party is what people will be getting if the Liberals are elected.
Yeah, you know what? I don't buy that, because the reality is that the leader calls the shots in the political parties of Canada. The parties are very much, their agendas are largely set, especially when the leader is the Prime Minister of the country. So I don't buy that. I mean, Brian Mulroney is very different from Pierre Poilievre, who's very different from Joe Clark, who's very different from Andrew Scheer, et cetera. So the flavor of the party and what they concentrate on as being their primary issues is always different. Carney has talked about some real, pocketbook issues, which I don't think that necessarily Trudeau put enough attention to in the past, and we've probably seen the results of that now. Same with crime. I mean, it was never really high on the priority list for the Trudeau government, but Carney is certainly making an issue. I just want to talk just for a nanosecond here about crime for a second, because this battle, this federal election idea that the federal government is solely responsible for the crime is a fallacy, because it's just not the case. If you The reality that we have, this catch and release bail thing, isn't exclusively a federal issue. It's as much a provincial issue, if not more, because this is where most of these issues are executed. So you can have the greatest bail policy and legislation and guidelines all you want, but if you don't have a judicial system that's going to enforce it or use those tools or have jails to incarcerate people, then it doesn't matter what that federal policy means because you don't have the capacity to deal with it. We have a situation right now where only 3% of charges that are written by local municipal police actually see the inside of a courtroom. The rest of them are settled, they're thrown out, whatever the case is. And that is as a lack of resources on the judicial front. Mr. Chinzer actually said something on LinkedIn that I liked, and I congratulated him for saying this. I'm not seeing this being talked about in the election, but he said on LinkedIn at one point, I was so happy to see it, crime is not a partisan issue. Every level of government, every party needs to participate. And that is the God's honest truth. It's a municipal issue, it's a provincial issue, it's a federal issue. And to somehow prosecute an election on this I think it's disingenuous, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Then picking up on the issue of the police force, in the 2025 budget of the region, we added another $1 million to get more police officers into the budget. You're welcome. But the critical issue is we recognize the responsibility we have at the local level, and I believe that our community members know that also. So I'm still not accepting that this is all about the cars and theft. I do notice that the numbers have changed there. It's now one vote difference.
Oh.
Which one? Which one?
It's
Anand has taken the lead.
Now Anand's
by
got
one
the lead
vote.
by one
One
vote.
vote.
So listen, I think I was also dwelling on the comment around the American posturing. The conservatives, the Republicans versus the Democrats. We absolutely have that. And I have good friends who live close to the lake, and they are strong conservatives. And it doesn't matter what I say. And and I know other people who would they just are absolutely into that particular posture, as is true with all the parties. So I'm thinking this is early for this particular little bit of a race, and we've just seen it can flip from one side to the other, and it's going to be a long journey.
Let's turn to Oakville West now, and I believe we have a graphic ready for that as well, because this is where we do have a series of candidates that are new to the game. And Seema Khan there, with 4% of polls reporting, has taken the lead, and I mean, it's doubling right now of the conservative candidate. This is more so the result I would have expected in Oakville East, not in Oakville West. I expected, and again, it's very early, but I expected these two candidates to be very, very close, and at the moment, they are definitely not. Samira, your take on the early jump here from Seema?
I do know, as someone who's frequenting this area a lot, that Seema really was putting in the effort. I did see her knocking a lot. She had a big team. I did, just driving around, see a lot of her signs on, private property, homeowners. And so I think that, is showing in numbers right now. I'm certainly not surprised, but I do feel happy for her that she put in the effort and now she can see the results.
Now, Jeff, you had mentioned, Tim Crowder. Here's someone who did have to fight for this seat. He won this seat. And again, it is early. I'm going to keep saying that until it's not early, and we're probably still going to be here. But nonetheless, this is a candidate that I thought perhaps maybe we'll be doing a little bit better.
You know what? I no disrespect to either of those candidates. Tim's got a great resume of community involvement. He's a dad. He's just a great all-around community guy. From what I understand about the Liberal candidates, same kind of thing. Very involved in the community. A proud lioness, I guess. But this is a leader race. Yeah. This has nothing to do with the local candidates. And I don't want to take anything away from them. But this is one of those ridings where, because neither candidate really has any profile, this is just strictly going to be decided on the leaders. As I said before, you mentioned Oakville East. Chinzer's been working like a devil since, I don't want to call him a devil, sorry. He's been working very hard and very strategically for a very long time to win this seat. So you've got a very strong candidate whose focus is crime. He's a former police officer. That's appealing to people. So he gets a bump above his leader. Same with Anand, though, and that's why we're seeing this closeness of the race. Global now has a 6-vote spread between them, with Chinzer slightly ahead. I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all. You got a riding with a clash of, frankly, political titans in some ways, and in the other one you have a clash of relative unknowns, although very nice people.
All polls are now closed in Canada's election. I see that popping up here on my screen. So everything is closed. The tallying begins in all of the ridings. Now, let's take a look at Burlington, where we do have, again, two, much like Oakville, what was it? I get confused with the two Oakville ridings now, but much like Oakville East, two candidates that have been here before, and this one is a down 2-1 here as far as the votes go. 6% reporting. Karina Gould jumping out ahead in this particular riding. Paul, no surprise here for you.
No surprise. It's rather what I expected. As I was talking to Karina yesterday, she was saying, yes, I've got more signs out than I've ever had in all my times running. And as I said to you before, I think she's very, very well regarded in the community. So this is not surprising at this point.
I'm actually surprised that there's that many signs out, because I don't know in this particular election, with the lead up and with the aggression and the anxiety scenario, I'm not a person who would want to put a sign on my lawn at this point, because it is so partisan. There's really two parties, and if your neighbors have the other signs on their lawn, it can get a little tense here and there.
It can get a little tense, but at the same time, like we have discussed before, this is a very consequential election. People are intensely passionate about Canadian sovereignty, not being the 51st state, and the tariff situation. And on top of that, I do believe that locally in Halton, the issue in Gaza and Middle East is also playing some role.
Okay, Paul, you had a point.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on that particular point about signs. In southeast Burlington, we have very few liberal signs. I don't think I've seen any. And when I mentioned that to Karina yesterday, she said, yeah, because the folks on southeast Burlington don't want to have signs, but they're all saying they're going to vote for me. And the reason is they're saying because people are a little conscious of the pressure from the neighbors.
Okay.
It's kind of funny. I spoke earlier about family gatherings where I would talk about it with my family, but as far as neighbors go, maybe you don't want to bring that up in this particular scenario, because they're going to be right beside you regardless of who you're voting for. So a lot of people wouldn't. I had a conversation with my neighbor just the other day. She's like, there's no sign on my lawn, and don't really want to talk about this. Like, that's kind of the way that it was. Yes, Jeff?
But it's not just that, I don't have a sign on my lawn, I don't talk about this. It's the fact that if you have a sign on your lawn, you are basically a target for everybody that disagrees with you.
Yep.
Again, it used to be, once again, we would talk to our neighbors and maybe even joke about the fact that we've got somebody else's sign, or maybe they say, well, we'll switch our signs when you go to bed tonight. Nowadays, it's like they see a sign of a party that you don't like, and now suddenly you've created a division between you and your neighbor. It's this polarization of politics that we are seeing playing out in Canada, partially because it's such a consequential election, but I think also because I think there's a bit of American politics creeping into our environment too, where politics is a full contact sport in the United States, whereas Canada, we're more genteel, and I think we remain that way, but there is a bit of that creeping in, and I've witnessed some of that in this election for sure.
I want to pick up on that in general. In the past, the media, a long time past, the media were a little more objective and a little more factual. They were also relatively less sources of news. Today, people take the news, they accept the news from the sources that sells them the things that they already think. And so the polarization, I believe, has got a lot to do with the internet and the social media.
Absolutely.
And the number of people lying about things all the time, and bad language, it's just changing.
It's just not Canadian.
Nor is it British, and nor is it anything I've seen before either.
Let's take a look at our next riding here, and that is Burlington North-Milton West. This is Adam Van Couverden's riding against Nadim Akbar. Again, pretty close here. This would be a riding where I'd say I'm surprised. 9% of votes in at this point. I would expect Adam to have a little bit more of a lead here. But if, with this particular riding, Samira, I come to you on this. This is not as dominant as I would have thought, but one of the things that I spoke about before is, Adam has run twice. He's had over 50% of the vote. He's going to need over 50% of the vote here because a lot of what we're talking about with this two-party system is simply due to the collapse of the NDP. We have not spoken of one NDP candidate here, and I don't think Canadians are speaking of the primary NDP candidate either.
I agree with you. I think NDP, federally especially, is just on its way out. We are seeing a demise and a collapse of the whole party. And that was evident throughout the election, throughout the federal election, the way nobody even took Jagmeet seriously this time. It's unfortunate because I do believe that we need parties because everybody's voice should be represented. Having said that, in this scenario, it depends where the polls are coming in from. We have pockets of heavy conservative voters in Milton, and we have pockets of heavy liberal voters in Milton. So if the results are coming in from those pockets, you would see more leaning towards conservatives and Nadeem Akbar, and if most of them are coming from the liberal polls, then you would see liberal leaning. So with only 9% votes coming in, I'm sure that we will see a change soon.
We haven't talked much about it. I want to throw this out to the panel as well, Jeff. The collapse of the NDP here. We're seeing the Conservatives pulling in numbers that are in the 40s. Normally, not only would that be good enough to win, that would be good enough for a majority government. Yeah. That is not the case anymore due to what has gone on with the NDP.
Yeah, there's no question the NDP collapse is definitely helping Carney. I mean, to a degree, it's helping Polyev as well, because I do think that NDP can be their direction. There are sort of very left-wing NDP members, and there's also very right-wing NDP members. So I think that they get a bit of a split, but I think the bump really goes to Mark Carney. I'm not sure I'm going to call the body cold yet. I think that there is a place for three parties in Canada, and I think it's good for democracy to not have a one-on-one battle. I think having that third spoiler vote or that third conscience vote, I think, is important. I do believe, though, that I'm going to pin the tail on the donkey on exactly what the NDP messed up here. They started a campaign pretending they were going to become the government. Right. And they spent about 3/4 of the campaign talking about, when I'm prime minister, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. They should have spoken from the very beginning along the lines of what they talked about in the last week or two, and that is that elect us to be a voice in Parliament to represent your interest, to be not a spoiler, that's not the right word, but to be a conscience vote. And if they would have done that, I think it would have given license to some people that are otherwise abandoning that party, because they don't understand what the point is of voting for a party that can't become prime minister. He failed from the get-go. He acknowledged, or he basically ruined his campaign from day one by not essentially explaining the benefit or the reality of what the NDP does for Canadian politics. And I think that was a mistake. He was fighting debates based on him becoming the prime minister.
Paul, I would think that, so the Liberal Party gets rid of their leader. Trudeau is gone. But Trudeau and Jagmeet worked hand in hand to put a bunch of policy in place. I actually think some of the Trudeau stink rubbed off on Jagmeet Singh here, and that has become a big problem for him as well.
That could be true, but then he started to part the ways in the last year or two. I think that Jagmeet lost touch with reality. To really to Jeff's point, that he should have stuck with the traditional territory of the NDP, which was looking after those who are oriented to needing more support and government services and things like that, and representing the people who really do need those things. But it was never going to control the agenda. It was okay while the Liberals were weak and in need of it, but he started playing as if he had a heavy hand, and he never did. And then it went downhill from there.
Yeah.
Let's get into our next riding here, and that is the hotly contested Milton East-Halton Hills South riding. Let's take a look at the graphic here. This is where Parm Gill and Christina Tesser-Dirksen, both star candidates, and it is quite close at the moment. We have 7% reporting at this part as far as polls go. And as you can see right now, Parm Gill just leading by 100 votes. Still a long way to go here, Samira, for your pal. Christina Tesser-Dirksen. I mean, your good friend, someone you have worked with. You have worked with both of the top candidates here.
Yeah.
I do feel like there might be a lean, but nonetheless, it is a good start. But I mean, Parm Gill, who hasn't made any appearances, just name recognition and party recognition alone, is currently leading.
Yes, he is, and he's leading by 100 votes, so we have a lot of polls left. Having said that, I have attended every single debate that has happened in Milton, the rural debate, CFUW debate, many other debates. Unfortunately, Mr. Gill never showed up to any of them, which is very disappointing because, yes, nobody likes getting asked tough questions, but when you sign up to represent a community, you sign up to answer questions, and it lets people know who you are as opposed to what your party is, what your leader's promising, and what the platform is. People also want to get to know the candidate, and unfortunately nobody was given that opportunity, and you know, that might end up hurting Mr. Gill.
We, however, I say this over and over, we live in a bubble here. I mean, all of you are municipal politicians. I cover the region. Talking to all of these people that we're speaking about tonight, how many people actually know, how many constituents actually know if their candidate here, Parm Gill, actually gets out? I'm curious if you think that actually makes a difference, Paul.
Could you rephrase that question, please? I'm not sure I understood.
Well, because, so I'm saying, we're saying Parm Gill has, Samira had mentioned, Parm Gill has not shown up. We have not seen Parm Gill. That should matter to voters. But does it actually matter to voters?
It's a question of respect for the candidate. They may have long tenure, but if they're not liked, they're not respected, then not so much. So irrespective of how well they play the particular campaign, there's still got that familiarity. You know, the incumbent always has an advantage.
So in this case, we consider Parm Gill the incumbent because he's been there and done that. But we do, Jeff, have a city councillor running against Parm Gill here, someone who is in touch with the community, someone who does get out there. It's just hard to get in touch with every single voter in order to get that message out.
I guess it depends on what metric it is that you use to make your decision about supporting a candidate. Is it party? Because if it's party, then that's obvious. You know, is it community involvement? Well, then maybe that's definitely obvious if that's the case. So
Is it nice person?
Nice person is our new factor.
Yes.
It's going to be this panel's one of our new factors that we're going to trademark and create our own URL for it. But I think that it depends on what the individual voter is. Uses as their yardstick to choose a candidate, and I think in a community like that is heavily conservative to begin with. So that's you automatically have that piece. That demographically, it is definitely a conservative riding. Then you have the Chong factor we talked about earlier, registered trademark, patent pending, and that's a big piece of that as well. And of course, then you also have name recognition. Whether or not Parm Gill is a good constituency person or bad, I'm not sure. I don't live there, but I do know that people know his name. They hear him in the news. They know about so there's all these different factors. So what it is that triggers your decision to vote for somebody in that kind of riding is it's a very difficult calculus in a riding like that. Because Gill should be winning this, honestly. Like based on the demographics of that riding, he should be winning this. He should be running away with this.
Absolutely, yes.
But the fact that the Liberal is so close on his heels at this point demonstrates something very clearly.
But if you're not first, you're last.
That's right.
In this particular poll and in any political race. So let's get into the Chong factor. Chong remains strong, as we have said, in Wellington-Halton Hills North. We'll take a look at that. What we have reported so far, 14%. We do have Michael Chong already up by over 1,000. Oh, okay, and we've just bumped up here. There's 18% reporting now.
Wow.
So, and we do have a significant lead to no one's surprise. I'm actually surprised it's not even larger than that.
That actually is surprising.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
Sean Cascadden there. I mean, this is a good showing for him. But I mean, this goes back to probably what we've been talking about, Jeff. This is a lot of this is voting for the party, voting for not even just for the party here. This could very well be voting for the leader.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind that even to conservatives and especially those of us that call ourselves red Tories, Carney's a palatable leader. So in a conservative riding, I may be just contradicting what I just said before, and I apologize if it sounds like I did, but it's like I said, it's a complicated calculus. To traditional conservatives, traditional progressive conservatives, Carney's not that far from where we are ideologically. So, perhaps what we're seeing is, and Chong is ideologically in that area as well. So, perhaps they're getting extra points for the fact that, from a ideology point of view, that constituent's not that concerned about Carney being the leader. So, that we may be creating a new namesake, the Cascadon factor.
The Cascadon factor. All right, we have a lot of slogans going on this show.
Yeah, the Cascadon Cascade. Yeah, there you go.
My goodness.
He's going to win. Chong's going to win for sure.
Yes.
I'm surprised that the margin's not as high as I was expecting it to be.
Right now, though.
Right now, it's early. It's early
It's
days.
very early, yeah.
My comment is, same comments I said about Palm Gill, only on steroids.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll continue to go through the ridings. The results will continue to pour in. We will keep you updated on that. After all, that is what we're here to do, taking a local look at a national vote, going through all 6 of Halton's ridings and letting you know who will be representing you in Ottawa. This is Your Vote, the federal edition, 2025, right here on Your TV Halton. Welcome back to Your Vote right here on Your TV Halton. We do have some breaking news. I mean, we're not above using other news sources here, as everyone does. You're scanning all over the place, but to save you scanning, we'll do it for you. CTV News has declared a Liberal minority. The CBC has said Liberals will form the next government. So with those two little tidbits in mind, panel, a Liberal minority, though. Now, granted, they could be wrong, but what do you take away from this, Jeff?
Well, Canada doesn't need a minority government right now. We saw how fractious it was in the last election.
Yep.
And the worst part of a Liberal or any minority government at this point is that the balance of power are the separatists. And that's potentially a terrifying thought when you think of a party that recently came out in the media saying that Canada is not really a country. So it's disturbing. We need a degree of efficiency in dealing with some of these major issues right now, and I'm not sure we're going to get that minority government. So hopefully CTV is wrong. I'd like to see a majority government one way or the other. I have supported a particular, publicly supported a particular party at this election that's different than I have in the past, but I do think a majority is what Canada needs right now to deal with some of these issues. You really need that mandate to go forward. And I don't think you get that with a minority, because you'll be constantly battling for survival and sucking up to the separatists, and you don't have the NDP.
Yep.
I mean, Jagmeet Singh should say in his closing speech tonight, "You don't have me to kick around anymore," because he would be a great spoil for another party.
Yeah.
Paul?
I certainly share the anxiety over a minority government. Clearly, the Liberals are going to be in the government. And the question about Bloc Québécois, as I've listened to the leader speak, I haven't been impressed that his first interests are Canada. And so, you know, if the Liberals can get 5 more seats, that gets them to 162, and with the New Democrats, that gets them back to where we were 2 years ago.
So we're just running the same path again. Samira?
I share my colleague's trepidation. I do not like minority governments as a principle because they have shorter lifespans, and we just had back-to-back elections.
Yep.
As a municipal politician, let me tell you, there is such election fatigue
Yes.
in everybody, and that includes us here who are politicians. We are tired of going to the polls, and to see another minority government where, you know, anytime the plug can be pulled out, it's not a good future to look ahead to. And certainly next year is the municipal elections in the fall, and I was hoping for some peace and quiet before that happens, because the worst thing you can face as a candidate in an election is voter fatigue. People are tired of back-to-back 4 provincial and federal, and let's not forget, Milton also had a by-election where MPP Hamid was elected. So there's a lot of voter fatigue in Milton, and I really don't like this. And agreed with the comments about the Bloc Québécois leader. Really seems like someone who has tunnel vision and does not understand what actually Canada looks like.
So I want to throw this point at the panel. We now have, looking at the Liberals, if we are showing that they are going to form a government, whether it be minority or majority, if they can swing a couple seats. I've always been very curious about Mark Carney. Here's a man who has been tremendously successful. Why does Mark Carney want this job, especially at this time? Jeff?
Oh, I was hoping for
someone else.
Yeah. I mean, I've listened to quite a few of his interviews, and I've tried to parse that myself. He's very successful, very wealthy individual, could pretty much write his own ticket to anywhere he wants to go, anything he wants to do. Taking what he's been saying on face value, I believe that he wants this job because he truly wants to fix some of the issues that Canada deals with. And I think some of us are frustrated hearing over and over again how broken Canada is. I think that Carney takes from a different perspective, that it's not broken, but it certainly there's some work to be done. So I'm going to take him at face value because he's our next Prime Minister, and believe that his motives are for the benefit of the country, that this isn't self-motivated, because again, he doesn't need the money. Not that job pays very well, I think that I'm hoping that that's the case. I think the best of all people that get into politics, frankly, for obvious reasons. But I do believe that people that when you put yourself out there, you're doing it for the right reasons. Whether it's Jagmeet Senior, Pierre Poilievre, or Mark Carney or whomever, you're doing it probably for the right reasons. But his specific motivations, I suspect that they're noble in light of the circumstances. But I will say that if it's a minority government, one of the benefits is that we're back here probably in 6 months and we'll get that sweet Kojiko money back to our paychecks.
Yeah, that's delightful. Listen, I like hanging out with you.
Yeah,
I like
it's
hanging
fun.
with all three of you. It's a fun night that we do. There's always a sense of energy in doing live television with the panel. I mean, you get to see all of our mistakes. It's very much unfiltered here.
There's mistakes?
There's a couple here and there. Paul, so here's the thing. You know, we mentioned the other candidates in particular. You know, you look at someone like Pierre Poilievre. This is a guy who's been involved in politics his entire life. This has been his dream to be the Canadian Prime Minister. Then there's Mark Carney, who I don't think it was little Mark Carney's dream to be the Canadian Prime Minister. I don't know that for a fact, but he's gone on to have a bunch of success outside of politics and then found his way in with no experience, is now the Prime Minister, is running an election. Why is this the guy?
I have a very distinct view on this. Notwithstanding his latter years, Joe Biden stepped up when the party needed them. I believe that Mark Carney, as a person who's later in his career, he's accomplished everything he probably ever wanted to accomplish. And he felt that he could step up and make a difference and make a contribution. Here is a person who is highly qualified, has a wonderful background and experience, and he's got seniority to him, and so he was answering the call. Would be my conclusion, and I'm actually quite pleased to see that, because when you take a look at global leadership, we're not seeing enough of that.
That's right.
So I believe that I don't know him. I haven't spoken to him. I haven't heard enough about why he's doing it. And besides that, you know, when it comes down to it, it's a personal choice. But I think that he is old enough and long enough in the tooth and experienced and successful enough to be able to make a mature decision.
You're nodding, Samira.
Yeah.
Is there more to it than that?
No, I mean, I completely agree with my colleagues here. The reason why he would want to do it is because he was needed, and he has a history of coming in and fixing messes. Okay. And so with that history, he was the ideal person that Trudeau actually wanted right beside him, which actually triggered the election with Chrystia Freeland stepping down. And once that happened, obviously Mark would have felt compelled to put his name on the ballot, because essentially it was him who caused the election. So I feel in that the experience he has of, you know, going in and fixing the Brexit situation and many other economic problems, he was the right person for the right job at the right time.
So coming out of this, if we do come out of tonight with a minority government, though, what it does prove is that Canada is very divided
Big time.
in what they believe. And that is obviously not a good thing. We're in a time of turmoil right now internationally with our borders to the south, and this election has just shown us that we can't even make a decision over a leader, and I don't know how much can be accomplished here, but this has to be a significant worry that what happens now with the fallout of this election, and Paul, I'll go to you first on this one, the fallout of this election, which becomes a minority government, you're going to have half of the country extremely angry that their leader is not in place.
I don't know that they're going to be extremely angry. I think they're going to be very worried about the process by which we make decisions.
By the vote itself.
Yeah, I think that the vote itself will not make them angry. I think we're all used to kind of this kind of outcome for an election. My sense is that there are a lot of reasonable Canadians who will be worrying about the outcome and how things will proceed in that context.
I would still go back to using angry or aggressive, actually, Jeff. It's an aggressive. Pierre Poilievre has been in attack mode And that's actually been one of his faults as we've gotten into this election. We have seen with Trump on the other side of the border that Canada has come together united, and Poilievre did not pivot in his campaign. We still saw a very aggressive nature in a lot of what he was doing, a lot of attack that was happening, and I think his followers, his constituents, his voters picked up on that as well, and I see that. We met someone said on steroids earlier, and I see that on steroids after this election.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that your assessment is actually accurate. I think you're going, especially if it's a minority, you're going to see a lot of recriminations about the election. If it was only for the few votes, or the CBC made it happen, or Jason sipped his cup in such a way that it tipped the election. But I think that you're going to find a lot of that conspiracy theory that's going to kick up after this election, particularly if it's a minority. If it's a clear-cut majority and it's decisive and it's clear, that's a different story. But when you get these elections that are on the fringes, on the element, or on the margins, it creates a lot of anxiety in people, and you get people blaming them, their friends. You voted Liberal and therefore we didn't get Poilievre, or you voted, whatever, and so we didn't get a majority government. And so I could see that becoming a problem. We are very divided. So I'm hoping, and to the question before, but why is Carney doing this? The one thing I forgot to say is that Carney is one of those rare statesmen to step into political leadership, because it doesn't happen anymore. The Bill Davises, the Paul Martins, the Brian Mulrooney's, the Joe Clarks, the statesmen of the past, the people, even John Chrétien, like the people in the past that have had storied careers before they got into politics, that applied their experience to their profession and really were able to inspire the community. That's the kind of person I think Carney is. He'll have very little time to do that before the daggers come out. And hopefully he can achieve that very quickly by hopefully dealing with some of these American issues and really getting a handle on the economy quickly. Get some good stuff happening so that he can prove his worth, and we won't be facing a parliament that could fall apart any moment. As much as I like being here, it would be nice to have a four-year break.
4-year gap, 4-year break, Jeff just said anxiety right there, Samira. So you know what, we were hoping that this election, you came in, you said anxiety when we started the night, and this was supposed to be the cure for the anxiety. If we did get a majority government tonight, it right now doesn't look like that's happening. So anxiety on overload?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really disturbed. Because not just because it's a liberal minority, because Bloc Québécois is the power broker here. And when you, excuse my language, when you have cuckoo birds like that, in the power.
Birds.
Oh boy.
Those fighting words.
Yes, they are. We talked about explicit language that we had heard in other media.
Whoa.
Now we have it here as well, everyone.
Oh.
Shame on you.
Anyhow.
Thanks for starting.
It just slipped. Yeah, and so when that happens, it's not good for anybody. I mean, what's happening in Quebec is not a representation of Canada. Bill 21 is an example of that, where they have banned articles of faith to be worn by even teachers. And that is an issue, especially for the Muslim community and the Sikh community, where we wear turbans and hijabs. And to have that party as a power player, it's a disturbing thought.
Now, I know you wanted to speak on that more, actually,
Yes.
with the community, the Muslim community, and the thoughts that were going into this election.
Yep.
So let's start there, and perhaps, knowing what we're seeing now, how do you think this reflects on that community?
It's definitely not an easy pill to swallow. As it is, we're noticing that, geopolitics is trickling down into our everyday life. It is because we have, all of us are immigrants here, and we bring with us our own cultures and our own affinities. And so when something happens in the world that is painful for so many of us, it affects us here too. It affects our neighbors. So it becomes a local issue. And for that matter, what I have seen in the last year and a half since we've had the situation in Gaza with Israel and Palestine, a lot of Muslim and Jewish folks alike are concerned because of the rise of Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and I know that the Muslim community actually rallied together to build a pledge that they requested all of the MP candidates to sign, and then an effort was made to pull out the vote for those who signed, and the pledge was just simply requesting them to ask for a ceasefire, arms embargo, and to let aid get into the affected areas. So I do feel that, you know, Black Kabikawa becoming one of the power players is not going to bode well for any community of faith.
All right. Thank you for that. Let's do I saw the gentleman over there going through some of the results, so let's take a look at some of the results as well in the same order that we've done, and that starts us in Oakville East. If we could have the graphic, please, for Oakville East. This is a riding with incumbent Anita Anand, and that's not the correct graphic. So, Anita Anand and Ron Chinzer, we've been good, but this is what I said earlier about the live television, friends.
Yeah.
This is what can happen here. We're working on it. We'll get you that. I can tell you from what's in front of me here right now, it looks like it's still very close, but Anita Anand, there we have it. As I said, still very close. 500 votes. Anita has jumped up in front now of Ron Chinzer. And I mean, clearly the rest of the parties at this point are absolutely irrelevant. This is two people. This is a very good showing for Ron Chinzer. Both of these candidates are very, very strong. We've expressed that. I'm curious, everyone on the panel here, I wanted to throw this at you. With Anita stepping away and then coming back, should Anita win tonight? Should the Liberals find their way into a majority or a minority government? Could you see Deputy Prime Minister status for Anita Anand? Jeff, Oakville is your home.
Well, from an Oakville perspective, I'd love that, obviously. I mean, I think she's certainly capable of it.
Yes.
And I mean, she would be a really good choice, in my opinion. I think that, I think the world of Anita. We share a constituency. You know, she has a great constituency staff. She's very intentional. She's demonstrated her ability to lead on major projects. So I think that would be a brilliant move on the part of Mr. Carney. The fact that she was handed the industry portfolio, you know, in the reshuffle, bodes very well for her reputation within the PMO, because that's a big portfolio going into this election when you consider, you know, interprovincial trade and all those major issues that are, you know, really important to get addressed really quickly.
But that has been Anita Anand
That's
for
been
the
Anita Anand
past, you know.
From the get-go, frankly.
She has been the problem solver. We've seen this over and over again. She did not run for the leader of the Liberal Party. She stayed away from that. But to leave and then to come back, to me, this is a star in your cabinet. This is someone who's been there for every problem that the government had, including the pandemic, procurement during the pandemic, like #1 right there. Minister of National Defense when the Ukraine war began. Over and over again, Anita Anand is the problem solver, at least perhaps not solver, but the person who is there when the problem occurs and is put in that very important position. Paul, Deputy Prime Minister, this is just coming from my brain here, but your thought?
Well, so come back to the comments I made at the very beginning, and that is that to me, the leader is the person who has the capacity to handle the issues that will come down the path. And I see Anita as having a strong personality, a strong background, a strong backbone, and has the capacity to handle challenges as we've seen before. So yes. Having said that, we also recognize that there's a change in the leadership and the judgment of and all those discussions that happen in closed rooms and the circumstances that arise. We don't know what's going to happen with the American situation yet, so there are many factors in play. But you know, I would say generally yes, but time will tell.
I'm sure time will tell. Listen, we're not necessarily making predictions. I really just wanted your thoughts on this. And Samira, I know you're a big fan of this, someone that you very much respect.
Yes.
And what do you think of Anita potentially in this role that is just completely coming from me? I have not heard this anywhere. I'm purely speculating.
Honestly, if you ask me, I don't see anybody else fitting that portfolio. Anita is the perfect person for that. Not only that, in the current world scenario, world politics scenario, I think you need a person like Anita who is able to not only deal with difficult files, but also able to work with everybody to get to the bottom of the problem, and to also not look at things as a partisan issue, but also to look at things as, you know, a problem that needs to be solved. And she has shown that again and again. And honestly, again, reiterating that nobody else fits the bill right now except for her.
All right. Well, it seems unanimous from us here. If we were doing the selection process, boom, you've heard it here first.
Yes.
YourTV Halton. Let's take a look at the other Oakville riding, Oakville West. This is where we have two new candidates that are fighting it out for this particular seat, and it is close. It's gotten closer, actually. Tim Crowder climbing a little bit here towards Seema Khan. And again, all other parties, not really a factor here. This is more so what I expected here, with these two being very close. And as we said, this looks to be more so a party vote than necessarily a candidate, because it is definitely hard to get to know a candidate when they're, you know, not seated already, when you don't have an incumbent in a riding.
Yeah, well, if you look at those numbers too, what you'll recognize the fact that that vote split is basically along the same percentage of the vote split across the country.
Yes.
So it's, I mean,
There you go.
I think that proves my, and I'm going to call it Jeff's theory.
Okay.
Well, the Jeff, no, I won't call it the Jeff factor, but anyway, I think it proves the point that this is a clear demonstration of the leaders. Again, not taking away anything from the candidates who we have all formally unanimously declared as being nice people, but the reality is that they do not have the name recognition, nor did they really have a long run up to this going. So I think that, you know, that looks a lot like Canada at the moment, which is really interesting. But frankly, so does Oakville East. So it's still
a lot of
yeah.
ridings are very similar.
Yeah, they are.
Is what we are seeing here. We knew it was going to come down to two parties, and a lot of ridings are similar because they're all very close. So let's continue on and move over to Burlington, and that's where we have Karina Gould as the incumbent in Burlington, and this is a pretty substantial lead here, still close, but a pretty substantial lead for Karina. There has never been a time where we have called this up with 30% of polls reporting now, where Emily Brown has been in the lead. Karina has been there from the very beginning and looks to be securing this. At this point, I mean, I know it is only 35%, but it would take quite the turn for Emily to come out on top in this particular scenario. Paul, Burlington is your home, and once again, we're still in expected territory here.
I believe we're on the path that we did expect. As you point out, 35%, and we're just looking at the previous riding, and it was 38%, and I'm looking at the total country, we're about, you know, 50% of polls. And I keep watching the total country numbers going up and down, and then the Liberals are down to 154 when they're up at 158, and then you see Conservatives now 150, just went down to 151. So this is one of those moments where it's absolutely going to be that nail biter we talked about.
Yep.
Although I don't think Burlington will be.
No, Burlington does look, we have a few ridings here that do look pretty confident in where they are headed, and let's continue to flip through them. Burlington North, another part of Burlington. Burlington North, Milton West, closer, much closer than I expected this to be. This is surprising to me. This is only 500 votes away with 48% of polls in here. Adam Van Couverden not running away with this.
Yeah.
You know, he has paddles in the kayak, but Nadeem Akbar is right behind him in this race.
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me actually. Like I said before, Nadeem has put in a lot of hard work, and it shows in these numbers. Having said that, we will, I think, get the advanced polling numbers added in the end.
Okay.
And that will make a difference as well, because who's able to pull out more votes during the advanced polls, I think, is going to pull this off.
And you think that will be Adam Van Couverden?
No, I don't know who that would be, but that would give us a more substantive picture, because right now we are at 48%. So,
See, that's very interesting that you bring that up, because generally, I think a lot of the advanced polls would probably sway conservative. When you have an audience, when you have voters that are so anxious to get to this election, so driven, going to the rallies that we saw. Poilievre was pushing that. I would think that they're also going to the rallies and going to the polls early. So that riding, that would be a huge upset if Adam loses that riding. That would be very, very surprising if that were to take place. I mean, is my theory off there, Paul?
I can't judge that because I've heard all those sort of theories through the last election in the United States where the Democrats are going to win, and it didn't work out. I think an awful lot of Canadians were going to the polls early for advanced voting simply because they were concerned about America. So the thing is, this process got disrupted by the Americans. Clearly it caused the election to occur when it did, and that was based on, even the preparation with Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Carney getting ready for something. But in the end, it's come down to the factors that were burdening Canadians prior to Mr. Trump are still there, and there is a significant differentiating factor occurring in this election that was in fact Trump-driven, and we might have been looking at a completely different story today had it not been for Mr. Trump. So I think, put all that together, I actually don't know that you can make any conclusion around the advanced polling.
Jeff, you gave me a funny look when I said that.
Yeah, I think that all this theorization, is that the word, about advanced polls and who they favor, I think is a lot of malarkey, to be honest with you. I mean, there are a couple factors, a couple things that are absolutes in politics, and that is, the one of the absolutes is that if you have an advanced poll on a national on a statutory holiday, you're going to have more people come out to vote.
And we did have that.
And we did. And we
had
had a holiday weekend, so it was very convenient.
Yep.
The other absolute is when people are motivated, they'll come out to advanced polls.
We have that
and
too.
we have on both sides of this very polar or whatever the term is. This very, oh my gosh. Yeah. We're just reacting to how this
back and forth
between but I mean, I think the fact that there's such a high degree of motivation, whether it's Mr. Trump or it's the economy or crime, whatever the factors, everybody's got a motivating factor. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, that this has been one of those elections where everybody has a piece of this, everybody has a stake in it, everybody has an opinion on it, and I think that's driving the turnout. And I think convenience, frankly, had a big part of this. So congratulations to Elections Canada for actually staging an advanced poll in a convenient way to actually mobilize Canadians.
Well, they've done it well this time, and hopefully they get it right in 6 months.
They haven't done so well on the website today, though.
It's been a tough go for the Elections Canada website today.
Yeah.
But we do have more results coming in. Let's continue to go to our next riding. Milton East, Halton Hills South. This one the gap has widened in this region here. 27% in. Parm Gill pulling ahead with 5,112 at the moment, and Christina Tesser-Dirksen 4,376. Samira, I'll come to you on this. Those are not positive numbers.
No.
If we're looking at these right here. Granted, only 27% in, but if the trend continues, not looking good for your friend.
Yeah, 60 polls are reporting, and Mr. Gill is ahead by 842 votes, and that is a very wide gap, especially when these many polls are reporting. So at the moment, it's looking like it's going to turn blue. Yeah. One other riding that I've been closely watching is the Carleton riding, which is the riding for the Conservative leader, Mr. Pierre Poilievre, and it's interesting to see that the Liberal person is ahead. Bruce Fanjoy is at 872, and Mr. Poilievre is at 657.
That would be fascinating. I was going to bring this up because I'm curious, whether, if that happens, we might have a completely different story. But here we go. We have Pierre Poilievre that has led the Conservative Party and took a big tumble. The Conservative Party was ready to just walk right through this election. Not a problem. Huge lead, and it has just dwindled and dwindled and dwindled, and now to have a leader potentially lose in their own riding, Jeff, that would be devastating. What is the future of Pierre Poilievre?
Well, first of all, I just want to state that the Poilievre ballot in Carleton is the second
Yes.
longest ballot in history. So the fact that there's less than 2,000 votes counted, I'm not sure that really shows a trend right now. That's a big ballot. It's, you know, it's yay long. But I think that it goes beyond just losing the riding. It goes to actually losing the election itself. So if he turns out to not be the victor tonight, and I'm saying if, because those numbers are getting really tight between the Liberals and the Conservatives. So I said earlier I was surprised that the national media were calling the election so quickly. If he doesn't win the election tonight, he will be subject to a leadership vote by the party, and Conservatives are well known for eating their you know, their leaders when they don't win elections.
See it over and over.
It's almost as predictable as death and taxes. So I could see that happening, you know, at the next convention of the party. That and there's going to be, I think that there's going to be a certain percentage of the party, myself included, because I've been a long-standing Conservative my entire life. In fact, I was a candidate once. I've worked for the party. I've worked as chief of staff in different offices and such. You cut my veins, and generally I bleed blue. But the reality is that I'm not blue in this election. I'm red in this election. The reason why is because the party has moved so far to the right that I don't feel at home anymore. There's a lot of us out there that have a similar viewpoint, and we're going to be watching this election with a very close eye to see if the public accepts it. Because we've gone through so many elections now, or the party's gone through so many elections now in a row, where they've not been able to pull off a victory. And a lot of that has to do, I think, with the polarization of where we are as a party, because it doesn't jive with where we are as a country. We're not a right-wing country. We are a moderate country, and that's where the Conservative Party or the Progressive Conservative Party has been successful in the past. That's where the Liberal Party has generally been successful in the past. We need to. Both parties have moved to their fringes. The Liberals became very left-wing. The Conservatives became very right-wing, and I don't think Canadians are buying it, which is what we're seeing here right now.
Well, this is what we've, I think, mentioned with the Liberals bringing in someone like Mark Carney. You have brought in someone that has the background in finance. You have brought in someone that does play more to the center. And therefore, I think we're seeing Canada respond to that. But we've talked about Mark Carney. Pierre Poilievre, though, Pierre Poilievre, after what, I mean, we don't know yet, but hypothetically speaking, we do not have a Conservative government tonight. What is the future of Pierre Poilievre? What is the future of the Conservative Party?
I've been wondering what the future of the Conservative Party would be for decades. Frankly, I haven't seen a significant shift in the politics and the positioning of the Conservative parties for decades. That said, I think the nature of media and its influence on the populace is really quite influential, and we saw in Canada during COVID when we had the invaders of Ottawa, and the very significant, challenging, very hard positions being taken by very right-wing people. Beginning to shape up like the Tea Party in the United States back in the beginning, 2000, that time frame. And what is happening is that that's manifested into a party that didn't have a real leader, so I got a Donald Trump. And are we on that path? Could that happen? I don't know what we are seeing for the future of democracy in general. And strong leadership. And what does strong leadership even represent? When we have this media, this mental attitude from most people, which is following their own beliefs and being satisfied by the media and the lies and all the information they get. So, because it's the Conservatives, I suspect Pierre Poilievre doesn't have a future if he doesn't win. But this is way too early. I'm just looking at that long list of.
Yes, of course,
so
of course.
if he doesn't win, I suspect he won't be there. But I wasn't sure why he was there anyway.
For a lack of a candidate,
Correct.
I suppose, is the reason why he found his way there. But he did. I mean, he has garnered some support. As we said, the numbers the Conservatives are showing tonight, if the NDP didn't collapse, that is the government.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was by default.
It was by default.
It's going to be by default that we didn't have a strong position from anyone. And then in terms of the parties,
Yeah.
there is nothing shining here. The context is difficult. We've come from a situation where the Liberals have fundamentally exhausted, their welcome. The Conservatives, people don't win, as I said at the outset here. They lose. The previous people lose. So we got to the place where the previous party lost, the previous leader lost, and so the fat was pulled out of the fire, so to speak, and it brought around what looks like a different outcome, but it may not be. We don't know, which is somewhat close. But I don't know what that means for the future because of the very challenging circumstances. I do believe that we have a potential leader in Carney that has the experience and the success and the orientation to be a good prime minister and be good for the country. But just looking at the numbers and the notion of a minority, it raises a lot of questions about what kind of crap we're going to be going through over the next little while.
What can get done?
Yeah.
What can get done if we're sitting with a minority government? Before we leave this conversation, we will take a break soon, but Samira, Pierre Poilievre, looking at the scenarios that can happen tonight, what happens?
It's not looking good for him. If the party loses, I think automatically triggers a leadership race, and which I think is a good thing for the Conservatives right now. Much to what my colleague said, the Conservative Party is now, as they're calling, the Maple MAGA, and and that, as my colleague said, that's not who we are as Canadians. That might be the American flavor of the day, but that's not the Canadian flavor of the day or week or whatever. Canadians like to be in the middle, where we care about our purses, but we also care about social services. And I believe that has been lost in that party. And it was actually lost in the Liberal Party as well. It went too far left, as said by Councillor Knoll. So I do believe that a reset has worked wonders for the Liberal Party with Trudeau gone and Mark in, and we're going to see the same, hopefully, with the Conservatives.
There's an interesting point to bring up here too, and that is that, and this may be partially responsible for this result tonight. Poilievre's popularity was always much lower than the party's itself.
Oh, yes.
And so, I mean, that tells you right away that perhaps if there was a different leader who had a more moderate position, like the Conservative Party, the Progressive Conservative Party. I got to keep correcting myself.
Yeah, there's two different parties.
The Progressive Conservative Party was always, as we called it, the big blue tent, and it was a party that could literally accommodate all people on that center to right spectrum. That maybe the folks on the farthest right didn't necessarily agree with everything, but they agreed with enough that they could work within that context of that big blue tent. But right now, the problem is that when you have really extremely strident positions on the right, those of us that are moderates, we can't countenance that. That's not something that we're comfortable with. And I think that's something that is, I think it was demonstrated in the disparity between the popularity between the party and the leader. And I think that it contributes to this outcome tonight. Now there's a 10-seat gap, so it's changed a little bit.
Yeah,
so,
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we're staring at this point is 158 seats. We're looking projected for the Liberals, 148 for the Conservatives, the Bloc at 24, the NDP at 9. We haven't touched on the NDP much. I mean, we just played the game of what happens to Pierre Poilievre next. I think another question is what happens to Jagmeet Singh next?
Have we looked up if he's winning his riding? Has anybody done that yet?
No, but I can start.
Go ahead.
Jagmeet is actually really unpopular as a leader himself. And because of that unpopularity, the party has tanked. I say that with conviction because the party has not been able to even raise any money. And for the leader to be saying that, we have to care about poverty and people who are less fortunate, and then to be walking around wearing Rolexes.
Not a great look.
That's not a great look. So not only has the party and the leader lost, their effectiveness, but also the respect of people.
So what happens, Paul?
Um,
Jagmeet Singh is the topic.
I think Jagmeet Singh's going to be gone. The same thing, after that phenomenal leader the NDP had,
Jack Layton?
Jack Layton.
Oof.
Yeah.
How
There's
do you-
I always say with Jack Layton, there is a man who, if you look at his face looked like it belonged on money. Like he just had the look of a prime minister.
Yep.
He did. So think about what that means for this party in transition as a result of that. He accomplished things that nobody expected of the NDP.
It's magic.
And so how do you then get to Jagmeet, who got lost because he was holding the Liberal government in place for a while, only to realize that he didn't have that much influence after all. And then he started going downhill. I don't see a future for Jagmeet. I just don't know enough about the NDP to know if they have a leader there who's got the horsepower and enough to be a future Jack Layton. I doubt it. I think that they come along very, very infrequently.
Well, I mean, I think that there's one name who is perking up some ears as far as NDPs have gone, and that is the Premier of Manitoba, Wab Kinew.
Yeah.
I think Wab Kinew, there's a certain
Yes.
magic around Wab Kinew.
Yes.
He's very early on
Yeah.
as far as his being a premier in Manitoba, but he's done certain things that I think he would make a very good leader. I don't know if he's next, but I do see that somewhere down the line for Wab Kinew, and I think that if there's someone to reinvigorate that party, that is who they are looking at. Bold prediction,
Agreed.
but I mean he is
Love it.
quite
Quite
taking, quite charismatic.
Charismatic.
I think you're reading my notes.
Am I reading? Do you
You're
have that
reading my
over there,
notes.
Jeff?
Yeah, I do. It's written right here.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I think he's emerged on the international scene
Yeah.
recently, dealing with America too.
He has.
And being very, what's the word I'm working? Very well spoken on
Yes.
the issue and
Yes.
knowledgeable and
Yes.
professional. So I could see that happening for sure. The big challenge they're going to face now is that they are clearly not even going to form an official party at this point. So they're 9 seats. You need 12 seats to be an official party. Without official party status, you don't get any budgets for research or any of that sort of thing. So they're going to have to dig deep to find resources to be able to reemerge unless something changes dramatically in the next couple hours, because they're destined for, well, they're going to basically be right beside the Green Party.
They have one. Is it May's
Elections
seat?
Canada say it's two
They
now.
have two leaders. I just
I wonder if it's the two leaders.
They have two leaders. The Green Party.
And they're going to have to fight for the
So-
best seat.
Aye.
Aye, he's right.
Oh, there's also someone that's gone far past their expiry date and is still there for, I don't know the reason.
Yeah.
Don't know.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will take a look at updated results for you as we continue on. The focus is Halton. We've been talking some national issues. We'll get back down to the local, look at some results from all of the 6 ridings in Halton, give you updates. After all, it is your vote. That's why we call it Your Vote on YourTV Halton. Back in 2 and 2. Welcome back. It is your vote right here on Your TV Halton. We are already over our time. We're going to hang out with you till about midnight. We know all the polls are not going to be counted at that point, but we can see some trends. So we are going. We asked the question actually before we went to break about Jagmeet Singh and his riding. No, he is not winning his riding at the moment. He is actually in third place. Granted, we only have about 25 of the 200 polls in. He has 22% of the vote, and the Liberal in his riding has 42% of the vote, so it doesn't look good for Jagmeet Singh for a variety of reasons tonight. But let's keep it local. That's what we said we were going to do, and please take me back to the graphic for our first riding. That is Anita Anand's riding. She is at least the incumbent there. So let's go back to Oakville East and take a look at this riding. And it's still mighty close here, but we do have, with 77% of the polls reporting now, Anita Anand, as you can see, has stepped ahead. There's quite a few votes in between. We have about 800 votes in between, 16,514 for Anita, and Ron has 15,731. So that does look pretty good for Anita Anand at this point. And actually, you know, if we look down the line, at least over 1,000 votes for Haley Ford, the NDP. So that is not bad.
That's great.
Well, that's right, Jeff. That's why I was going to throw it over to you right there. There is someone that you said is a lovely
She's great.
young politician,
Yeah.
or at least this is the first time she's run. So congratulations for doing that. Very difficult, especially you talked about a lot of people voting for party leaders. Yeah. Well, she's doing better than Jagmeet Singh is.
Yeah, she certainly is, and I just hope she's not angling for my seat next time.
Oh.
But I'm just kidding. Yeah, Haley is a very lovely lady, and I think that she's, like I said, she's got a great future. My lead researcher, my wife, just texted me to say that on the national news, Michelle advises that the advanced polls came in Atlantic Canada. I guess there was some shifts, which is we've just seen the Liberals' numbers jump to 164. So I think that's what one of the things that.
So 164 Liberals, 146 Conservatives projected, 23 the Bloc, 9 NDP still, so still not hitting party status.
Now Michelle expects a paycheck now too.
Okay, well, you know, there we go. We just dish out the money here on community television. That's what community television is known for, of course. Let's continue on.
Talk about misinformation.
Don't think so.
Oakville West is where we will head to next with our graphic. Get an update on this. We have Seema Khan and Tim Crowder being the top two candidates here. And Seema Khan, you know, up top. And as we said, with no incumbent here, you definitely have these particular candidates reflecting the vote of Canada. And it's continued on. And Seema Khan, someone who came into this, and Jeff, you had said that unopposed to grab this particular spot in the Liberal Party.
Yeah. I mean, I did that once myself in a riding that couldn't possibly win, and it was a fight to see who was actually going to take the job and run and hold the party banner. So I suspect that was probably part of the motivation when you consider where we were in the polls at that point.
Right.
But you know, for somebody who wants to have a future in politics, and I certainly did when I did it, because my first political run was, as we called in the business, a sacrificial lamb candidate.
Okay.
I didn't win. I increased the vote by 0.8%, which got us over the magic 15%, which got us our deposit back. But I suspected there was similar circumstances there. But then again, you know, like in 1992, when we went to bed that night with the first NDP government in the history of Ontario, same kind of thing. You sometimes just never know what's going to happen.
That was the David Peterson, Bob Ray debacle that took place there?
Yep. David Peterson calling an election long before his best before date had come, and as a result, we had NDP government, which was shocking, to say the least.
When you quote the 90s, I got a chance. When you went back to 84 earlier, I was lost.
Sorry.
That's quite all right.
I'm
I'm
very
sure many
old.
of our viewers were not. They remember it very well.
Yes.
There's a lot of gray in this beard, but that's just because I'm stressed out sometimes. Paul, you look like you had something to say.
Well, what you would say he's very old.
Paul, you remember the 60s?
Well, no, there were a lot of substances.
We're hitting the point where it's almost midnight.
Oh my gosh.
I was talking about the alcohol.
Oh, okay. We
We had a lot of fun in those days. you know, times were different back then. You know, we had decent rock music and things like that
Samira,
going
can
on.
you check his cup, please?
No, I was just thinking about, you know, the discussion around SEMA, and I remember, you know, I'm not sure my mayor will be terribly happy for me reminding her that, you know, she ran for the Liberal Party, you know, what, 20 years ago, but you know, with the determination and just aspirations to be a political figure, she kept going, and she ran a few times and to run on council and won, and now she's mayor. And you know, it takes some determination to make it happen. And you know, I'm looking at the young woman in Oakville there and going, gosh, you know, good for her because she wants to do it. And you know, I think that's the way things happen. Not for everybody, like Mark Carney or for myself. You know, I came in late and just happened to be at the right time in the right place. But nevertheless, we need to have young people coming in as well, because a lot of us older people, you know, need to get out of the way.
You're still here, Paul.
Well, you know, I'm not dead yet.
Also, I believe the mayor's in Appledorn at this point, celebrating the Twin Cities. So I think you're going to be okay.
Well, but it's going to be on the recording somewhere.
Well, we'll see.
You know.
We'll see. Don't worry. I'll get her the clip.
I was entirely, it was entirely appropriate, I have you know.
Let's go to Burlington. Take a look at Karina Gould, the incumbent here, putting on a dominant performance tonight. We have 3,000 votes in between there, 70% that has come in.
Yeah.
Once again, this is. It's always been this way. I mean, we've never seen a point tonight where Emily Brown did come up on top of Karina Gould. It's always been Karina first here, the Liberal Party doing well with this candidate, proving that, you know, there was no hurt that was done with the running for the leader of the Liberal Party.
Not at all. And I want to add to this that the first time she ran back in 2012, something like that, when Mike Wallace had been the incumbent for a couple of terms, and I remember Karina speaking in the public meetings there with such power and such commitment. That, you know, she demonstrated then who she was, and she is still that person. Only she's far better for having a number of terms in office. So I think this is consistent with that story.
Let's go up to Burlington, North-Milton West. We have seen a bit more of a gap here, and this bodes well for Adam Van Couverden, who has now taken a more considerable lead. This, Samira, is more so what I was expecting out of this, with Adam now 2,000 votes thereabouts ahead, 74% reporting.
Yes, so 158 out of 208 polls are reporting. So that's the majority of polls, obviously. This lead is definitely, you know, it's almost 2,000. But compared to last time, where Adam was 10,000 votes ahead, it is a very small gap.
Yeah, compared to last time it is. He is still, though, I mean, he is at 50, right now, 50.8% of the vote.
Yep.
Always more
Always
than 50%.
That is Adam.
For Adam Van Couverden that we've seen in the elections that he has run in. Milton East, Halton Hills South. This has gotten a lot closer.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, my
This
goodness.
is neck and neck.
Neck,
If we
yeah.
go even further,
47.
we have more advanced polls in front of us here. They are both sitting at 48.1% of the share that I'm looking at right now. We have 19 votes separating these two top candidates, Parm Gill, Christina Tesser-Dirksen. These are two star candidates going in to review. Christina Tesser-Dirksen, currently a councillor. Parm Gill has been the MPP for this riding, left being the MPP in order to take this new riding. This is a new riding here. Samira, smiles.
Smiles and no surprises. As I said, I've seen the hard work that Christina has put in. Let's not forget, NDP is 364, and the Green Party also has a substantial number there. So traditionally, those votes are also tapping into Liberal votes. And despite that, you know, it is said that a strong NDP showing actually cuts into the Liberal votes.
Right.
Despite that, you can see that she's only 19 votes away, and 100 polls out of 201 polls have been called.
Okay.
So that's half of the polls called, and it's looking good right now.
This is an interesting one. This has proved to be pretty much the most interesting
Yes.
region riding of the night, and it does happen to be the new one. You know, I walked into this, and I think I said off the top of the show, it felt like both parties, with this being a new riding, went in a guns a-blazing here, you know, putting two star candidates in place, trying to earn this seat. Let's continue on, and let's go to a seat that we knew where it was going to go. I actually thought it would be more than this, up to Michael Chong's riding, Wellington-Halton Hills North. We will take a look at this. And here we have it, Michael Chong, pretty dominant. And it looks like we do have another Chong victory here, to no one's surprise. Yeah, that was pretty much went in saying that, and that does seem to be the way.
Except the plurality.
The plurality?
Like the difference between the Conservatives and the Liberals is just not what you normally expect in that
Not as
riding at
much.
all. Yeah, not even close.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Currently, yeah, Chong at 52% of the vote, Kaskaden at 42% of the vote. I mean, that's a good showing for Kaskaden, but again, when it comes down to a candidate that is very new, Kaskaden was added very late, the latest of all the candidates in Halton for the Liberals. This is a party vote, a leader vote is what we are seeing here with Chong and Kaskaden. So there you have it. That is what has gone on in the 6 ridings of Halton. So, you know, we've got a few minutes left here, only about 3 minutes left. We're going to do some parting shots here, some parting takes. We are going to sign off at midnight, but we've given you a bit of an indication of where things are going. So with that in mind, Samira, is this what you expected? What are you taking out of what we're seeing tonight?
I did expect a Liberal victory, but looking at the polls, expected it to be a comfortable majority.
Okay.
And for me to see it as a probable minority is just adding to the anxiety.
Word of the night.
And with regards to the 2 Milton ridings, which is where I live, not surprised by seeing the strong showing of all the candidates, honestly. I know all of them personally. They are all wonderful people, and as my colleague said, nice people. Nice folks, and I wish all of them all the best. It's not easy to put your name on a ballot and to fight the good fight. So I congratulate all of them, and now I'm seeing the Milton East, Halton Hills gap getting even more close, because now Parmglee is leading only by 15 votes.
We're going to continue to follow that along, but we got about 30 seconds from you, Paul.
30 seconds. Well, I'm glad to see that Mark Carney actually won his seat.
Okay.
Pretty well. I'm delighted to see the candidates that we have in Burlington, all I respect, and to see the winners being Karina and Adam. So I'm good with that too. So. Thank you.
But we do have the minority, perhaps. We shall see where it goes.
We'll see.
We'll see where it goes is really where we can leave off. Jeff, you have the last word from the panel. Got about 40 seconds because you get 10 more than Paul.
Oh, that's great. Well, first of all, I really don't like the fact I got the squeaky chair tonight.
Okay.
But more importantly,
we'll fix it in 6 months.
Thank you. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, boy. Don't
The
jinx it,
squeaky wheel gets the
please.
grease. First of all, I want to say what I always say at every election: the voters are never wrong. So at the end of the day, whatever the outcome is, it's the right outcome for Canada, because that's what's been decided by the people of Canada. We will carry on as a country, and we will be stronger tomorrow than we were today, notwithstanding a minority government. And my fondest wish is that the folks that do return to the House of Commons will cooperate to the point where they can create some synergies and some stability for a period of time, so we're not just basically fighting a non-stop election in the House of Commons. So thank you to all the candidates who ran, winners or losers. Again, we really appreciate your service, and there were some really good campaigns in Halton Region.
Well, I appreciate all of you being here to keep me company tonight and keep all of our viewers company as well. Thank you for doing this. This is kind of like leaving a doctor's office where, you know, nice to see you, but I hope not to see you again in 6 months, to be honest with you. But if it's a minority government, we may find that way. All of you out there, I hope to see you tomorrow. We are going to say goodbye for tonight, but here's what we are going to do. Tomorrow night on Halton News, of course, we are back at Live at 5. We're going to present to you all of the results that we have. We do have reporters in each one of these ridings. They are at the offices of well, hopefully they're going to find the winner in each of the ridings, and they will have a report back tomorrow. We will air all of them on Halton News live at 5. Please join us then. Follow along with your results tonight, but we will see you back here tomorrow night live at 5. So as I always say, don't you dare miss it.